Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Hold on, okay. Joe Plankus?
Here?
Okay, Joe's mic must have been muted. Okay, we're good to go now. Sorry,
Okay,
we are
sorry.
live.
Yeah, it was muted. I apologize, Chris.
Joe Plankus?
Here?
Jill Doyle?
Here.
Here.
Okay, great. We have a quorum, 16/20/22. There is one minor correction on last paragraph before additional business. Says Linda Noss about cost. I think Linda Noss asked about the cost of the issuance of the bond. So that needs to be tweaked a little bit, John, for making that correction to get the full meaning.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't have anything. Commission members, you have anything else in regards to the minutes?
None.
Motion by Jill Doyle. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Bob Beaudry. Thank you. All in favor, please.
Jill Doyle?
Aye.
Joe Plankus?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Joe, can we also make sure we add to the record that Mike Steele is in attendance tonight? He didn't get called on roll. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good point, Jill. Thank you. Apologize for that, Mike. You're good. Next item is approval of claims. We have a number of them from O.W. Crone. Any questions from members of the commission?
It's Linda. I just have one question, and if you just saw in the minutes, I'd asked Catherine at the last meeting if these O.W. Crone expenses were going to be in the bond issuance costs. And I've been thinking about that ever since and kind of looking at other things. That means it goes into the bond. It's payable over 25 years with interest. Is there another way that we can do this? Like right now, we're paying them out of the East Side TIF, for example, on Union Square. So could we continue to do that? And at some point when the TIF fund generates enough for Union Square, that we can appropriate the money out of the East Side TIF and back to the East Side TIF from the Union Square TIF, rather than putting it in a long bond.
Catherine, you want to address that question, please? Oh,
Your mic?
Mike, please. Can I have a green light?
Now,
Yes.
sorry. So bond issuance costs are properly chargeable to the bond. It is not customary to pay those outside of the bond, and even when they are paid ahead of time, they are reimbursed from bond proceeds. So our position is that they would be paid out of the bond.
That is a standard position that we've used for all the bonds that I've been working with John and the rest of the team on, Linda, for the last 10, 12 years. That gets reimbursed up front, and then we don't have to worry about it or track it or anything
Right.
else. And then the TIF revenues would then, of course, work towards paying off the balance of the bond based on the schedule that's been negotiated and approved by the commission.
Yeah,
So
our
Catherine,
legal opinion is that
that-
it's properly chargeable to the bond.
Yeah, I know legally it can be, but does it then add into the total amount of the bond, and it's charged interest, and it's in our payments over 25 years?
Yes.
Okay, that's what people were questioning about. And, after our discussion at the last meeting, they just thought that seemed to be a bit much, but
That's,
I know it's legally allowable, but is there another way to do it?
well, it's also an accounting, and I can let Jim speak to that, and I won't try to put my CPA hat on, but, and in full disclosure, I am. But accounting-wise, it's properly chargeable to the bond and out of bond issuance costs. But I will let Jim give you
Okay,
a
Jim,
formal
any-
opinion on that if he wanted to.
I don't really have anything different.
Jim, why don't you?
It's not just O.W. Cronin Associates fees, it's bond counsel fees, it's placement agent fees,
Well,
it's
those
all the
I-
costs. And they're all related to doing the bond,
Right.
so,
But
and
the O.W.
getting,
Crone, we're paying out of another TIF fund right now because the
Right.
TIF doesn't generate.
right.
And
But
so
we will
people are
reimburse that fund, so it still gets back to the same place, Linda, as all the other issuance costs.
I think the question was
comes
just
out.
on interest and paying for so
No,
long.
it's true, you would pay interest on it. You do it on all the issuance costs.
Normal procedure.
Well, and also let me add that these are bonds being issued under the Economic Development Revenue Statute. There is a particular subsection of IC 36-714-39, which allows TIF to be used for payment on the leases and the bonds. So for them to take it straight out of funds, I don't believe is in line with the code under which we are issuing the bonds, which is 36-712.
Okay,
Well, that's a
Catherine.
much better explanation for you to give everyone than me to try.
So-
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from commission members? Okay, if not, look for a motion for approval of claims.
So moved.
Doug Holt's motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Jill Doyle. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John?
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Linda Noss,
Aye.
And you need Bob.
Bob Bodray.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the ratification of current Grand Park user agreements. So we've got Matt Trinian online remotely. Matt?
Yes, good evening, commission members. Thank you for allowing me to do this remotely today. I did send the Grand Park agreements a few weeks back. Most of them were largely standard, but there was one that I did call the attention to and received some questions about, and that was just the agreement done with special event seating for the bleachers that are put up for Colts training camp. As mentioned, that agreement is a little bit unique as there are no direct costs in that agreement, but it is a 50-50 split of costs. So 50% is due prior to bleacher build out, and then 50% is due at the end of bleacher completion. The agreement is a bit unique, again, just from an accounting standpoint, in that we will pay for the whole bleacher set and will be reimbursed by the Colts upon the completion. And again, I did want to call that out. And in the file set, you should have also seen that there was an invoice for the first 50% that was due. So I wanted to make sure that I called that out and shared that information. Happy to take on any other questions that may be had at this time.
Okay, any questions from commission members regards to that agreement?
Can you explain again, Matt, about the approximate $400,000 that you told me earlier?
Yeah, so the overall agreement is just shy of $400,000 in totality. Again, we as the city of Westfield will be paying for the whole piece, but will be reimbursed for the Colts portion. Essentially, the agreement calls the Colts training camp agreement calls that the city pays for 50% of the bleachers. Thus, through the math, it basically equates to about $150,000 in totality. So we as the city of Westfield will pay $150,000 and will charge the Colts for the balance as a reimbursement. So that will cover our side of the agreement, and the Colts again will pay for the balance directly back to us as a reimbursement.
Does that answer your question, Linda?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm open for a motion for approval of the Grand Park user agreements. So moved by Joe Plankus. Do I have a second?
Second, Linda Nass.
Second by Linda Nass. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John, if you'll take roll, please.
Aye.
Bob Bodray,
I said aye.
Linda Noss,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye. Vote passes motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for Old Town lease. Catherine, if you want to do a little preliminary here, please.
Yes. At the last meeting, you approved a preliminary form of the lease and adopted a resolution, and that resolution authorized publicizing the notice of public hearing on the lease. Since that time, the council has introduced an ordinance and adopted an ordinance approving the lease and the lit pledge as a backup to the extent that the TIF revenues in the Union Square allocation area are not sufficient. So at this point, you are at the point in the code where you will have a public hearing on the lease and make consider the resolution before you to approve the lease, which includes certain findings and determinations. From that point forward, we would seek signatures on the lease, advertise a notice of execution of the lease, and the last step is that the council will be considering an ordinance to approve the actual bond issuance at their next meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Catherine. Okay, we will open up the public hearing at 6:11 PM. Do we have any cards, John, or do we have any emails? Do we have Kevin on the line?
I do not have any cards. Kevin?
Yeah, this is Kevin. Good evening. At this time, I do not have any emails.
Okay, we'll wait a minute here. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this item? Okay, we'll wait a little bit here and see if we get any emails coming in. Okay, having received none, we'll close the public hearing at 6:12. So the next item we have on the agenda is the resolution regards to the Resolution 08, 2022, authorizing lease with Building Corporation. Catherine, do you want to speak to this any further, please?
This is an approval required under 36.714, 25.2, for you to make the determination that the terms of the lease are based upon the value of the lease premises, that the annual rental payments to be paid by the commission pursuant to the terms of the lease are at a rate not to exceed $1,040,000, that those rentals are fair and reasonable, and that the use of the lease premises throughout the terms of the lease will serve the public purposes of the city and is in the best interest of its residents. And those findings and determinations are set forth in Section 1 of the resolution. As you know, O.W. Crone has prepared estimates and has worked with the developer, Old Town, regarding the estimates and the value of the project. And so everything is as presented and reviewed also by O.W. Crone and developer.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Jim, is there anything you want to add to the discussion in regards to this resolution since you worked up all the financials?
What you have in your resolutions are the maximum parameters that we came up with some time ago to hopefully fit this all in by the time all the lengthy approval process is done. So what I wanted to update everybody on, and we're still going with that, we're not changing anything, but we've been out in this very challenging market trying to see how we were going to get this deal done. So after the rates were increased last week by the feds again, we were able to get out in the market, or not we, me personally, but we used Baird as the placement agent, bond seller, and that's the underwriter that did the fire station bonds for the city last December. And we've been able to solicit or firm up a contingent deal for the bonds that will meet the parameters, which is pretty challenging given where market's
So it would
going
not
right
exceed the
now.
$1,040,000.
So with it's Bank One, it's not Bank One, it's Capital One. Sorry, Capital One Bank.
Okay.
Wrong bank. It's a taxable bond. The rate's 5.4%. We are only contingently linked in because we don't have all the approvals yet. So obviously we cannot do that. But we gave them they are locked in. The good news is, guys, the way we have this set up is the bank is locked in. We can't close until August 3rd, which is 30 days after the council approval next week. So roughly 30 days. So the bank will hold that rate for 30 days. And who knows what's going to happen in another 6 weeks. Excuse me, I meant to say 6 weeks, not the 30-day holding period on the lease at the end. So, and all that market risk, whatever the rates do, will be on the bank, not on you guys. So the payment at that rate is very close to what my estimates are. In terms of numbers, we were going with 992, I think was my number, of a conservative TIF estimate after the whole project's built out. Both phases, the primary phase on 32 and the Midland Trail Apartments South. So it matches up very closely. Like my 992, I think theirs is, the payments are between 990 and 995. It's very close. Now, I had hoped to have a gap there, but at this point, we're maybe very fortunate to get this deal done. So, and our maximum payment stipulation that I think she just mentioned, it's in your documents, is $1,040,000. So we still have a $50,000 cushion. We don't want to use that, and we shouldn't need to if all the approvals progress. So in that context, I'm very pleased with that. There will be probably a gap in the first 2 years because it's going to take 4 years for these projects to be built and generate full TIF, as you know. If we start this year, the first phase will be done by the summer of '24, in 2 years, basically from now. So you'll get the full assessment on that first phase, January 1, '25, which means
Payable in
26, June of '26. Second phase will be a year after that. So yes, we have cap I for 3 years, but we can't, there's still going to be a time period when we don't have that full 992,000 or whatever it hopes to be. Hopefully it'll be more than that of increment. And so during that first 2 years, we have the lit pledge. We can use lit. I would suggest probably programming some other TIF in an adjacent area to cover that, and we should be able to work that into the plans John and I will be working on in terms of forecasting and projecting. But that's the full story. That's all happened in since last Wednesday. But we needed to get to a certain point in the process to make sure we were relatively confident everything was going to come together, get some, and so that relates to all this stuff. I didn't know when you really wanted me to talk about it, but I figured this is as good as any to give you guys a really complete update on this. And I didn't tell the council this last Monday when I was there because we didn't know. They'll hear about it this coming Monday, and then they can decide if they want to move forward.
Okay, very good, Jim. Thank you for the summary. Appreciate that. Okay, any questions from the commission members?
Jim, how long are we locked into that rate with Capital One?
10 years.
So, okay. So we have time. Okay.
Yeah, you'll have it for 10 years, and then you can read it.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't answer it right. I thought you meant.
Why don't you go up to microphone, Jim,
How long
please?
before we can refi?
No.
Sorry.
If we can refinance, that would be
Till
fantastic.
August 3rd.
You have a 10-year call.
August
period
3rd
on the bond.
is the date we've given them, and Catherine's moved her schedule around very graciously so we can close on that date. So as long as we can get it done by
As long as we
August
can move on
3rd,
that date, we're locked in. Is that right?
we are
locked
locked
into
into that
5.4.
date
Okay.
in writing from them.
Okay, thank you.
So, sorry.
That's all.
But yeah, refi, we'll have to wait 10 years. That's the standard
That's
call
standard,
right
yeah.
now, and of course, they're not going to give it. But at these rates, likely somebody will be able to refi it and reduce things in 10 years, we hope. But at this rate, we're really pleased that we have a project. I mean, the worst case would be we ought to start over again and say, oh, do we want to pay even more? Because if you wait another 2 or 3 months, we don't know what costs are for, supplies are going to do, what interest rates are going to do. It's just, so anyway.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Okay, other questions from commission members? Okay, hearing none, open for motion for approval of Resolution 08-2022.
So moved?
Okay, motion by Doug Holtz. Do I have a second? Joe Plankus, I'll second that motion. John, take a roll call, please.
Bob Beaudry.
Aye.
I'm having problems. There we go. Linda Noss,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a resolution 09-2022, pledging TIF revenues for Union Square. Catherine?
All right, this is the actual TIF pledge resolution, pledging the tax increment revenues from the Union Square allocation area to make the lease rental payments. And so again, the council is considering, has adopted the ordinance with the lit pledge, and they will consider the bond issuance on Monday. One point I want to make about the bond ordinance is that in that bond ordinance, there has been included a section to repeal the 2019 bond issue that was approved at the council level for Union Square. So that will be repealed and will
That was
no
original
longer-
$6 million.
Exactly, and that will no longer be outstanding after the council adopts the ordinance.
Once they adopt it.
Yes.
Okay. Questions from commission members? Okay, hearing none, I'm open for a motion for approval of resolution 09-2022.
So moved.
So moved by Jill Doyle. Do I have a second? Second by Bob Beaudry. John, take roll, please.
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Linda Noss,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 10-2022, Executive Director. Cam, if you would. Thank you, Justin.
Sure, and Commission will likely recall, we discussed this a couple months ago, and the Commission appointed Jeremy Lawler as the Executive Director on an interim basis for a 60-day period in accordance with its powers to do so under state statute. This resolution is designed to fill in some detail about the duties and obligations of that role. I think the resolution is fairly straightforward and speaks for itself. Exhibit A contains a list of duties and obligations that are centered in really four main areas. One is to be really the front door for prospective projects of an economic development or redevelopment nature. Two is being a liaison and in service to you all as the commission. Three is managing ongoing projects, much like you've seen happen with Union Square, et cetera, things that are moving through approvals process or moving into construction phase, et cetera. And four is maintaining relationships with other city agencies and also state, county, other agencies that touch and concern redevelopment prospects and projects undertaken by the commission. You'll note that we intentionally did not include a broad grant of authority for unilateral execution of contracts or things of that nature, so that the contracting power and duties under state statute would remain with the commission itself. So you would anticipate that anything to be agreed to in a contract or any kind of obligation would come before you for approval or ratification in the normal course of meetings. So with that, any questions? I'm glad to discuss.
Okay, any questions for Cam from commission members?
I have a couple. Manage and market commission real estate holdings. What does that mean? I mean, do we?
Yeah, and I don't, as I sit here, know to what degree the commission may have real property holdings, if at all, beyond Grand Park, but that really just speaks to the staff layer of day-to-day responsiveness to how is that property being maintained, being marketed for redevelopment, if that's what it's held for.
Like as it pertains to leases, or?
Sure.
Because I think the RDA technically owns Grand Park and we lease it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So-
The Redevelopment Commission has a leasehold interest.
That's what I
for
was a little
long-term.
confused on that.
Yeah, just just responsiveness to inquiries on property that's under the control of the commission.
And then maintain relationships and communications with commissioners. So I've never had the pleasure of meeting Jeremy in person. So maybe sometime we can do that. So we'd have some kind of communication, and that would be awesome. Let's see, what else? Should there be included in here, something about reports to the treasurer? I mean, is that included? I mean, since I guess the clerk treasurer is the treasurer for the RDC, so should that be included in this responsibilities?
The clerk treasurer is by statute the fiscal officer for the commission, as you know. You could all certainly choose to include some kind of report. Typically, that is handled by your municipal advisor relative to debt service paid on bonds or collections and things like that in conjunction with the clerk treasurer. So as I compiled this list of duties and obligations, the prospect of a report from the executive director to the clerk treasurer didn't occur to me as something that would likely happen given the sort of purviews between the two offices. But again, that's your provenance as the commission to assign duties. This was meant to be a broad starting point.
Okay. And then my final one is plans and goals. In the section at the top says leads efforts to quantitatively and qualitatively evaluate project proposals relative to the plans and goals of the city and the commission. Do we have goals, or what are the goals? I wasn't aware. I mean,
that's up to you all. I think I just meant that person in that executive director role.
do we have goals?
And I guess
I don't know. Do we have goals?
Well, I mean,
I can answer that question from the standpoint of having drafted the sentence. Just the thought being, if there is a prospective project, Jeremy would be evaluating how the number side makes sense, probably with Jim's help and others, how the qualitative aspects of that project make sense, and how that sort of plays to plans in place or goals that are stated by the commission and the council and the city, and just making sure that those metrics of what makes a project worthy of presentation to you all for some manner of approval makes some kind of qualitative sense to you all. So that wasn't a reference to a specific document of goals. That was really just how that process or that presentation of a particular project might work.
Yeah, I guess it's just a procedural thing. I just didn't really understand that.
it's really more, that's a good word, Bob, procedural. I mean, if Jeremy's got questions, he doesn't hesitate to let us know either through John or direct to me if there's something that's coming up that we may end up getting involved in. He'll certainly give us guidance based on his research and certainly working with O.W. Crone and other people if it's a project that makes sense for the city. And does it really meet the goals of the city, which is really it manifests itself in following the comp plan. The comp plan is really the driver that we use, and obviously it's been amended a number of times. A thoroughfare plan, same thing, it's been amended a number of times. So those kinds of things are those types of projects and goals are, I think, spelled out in those documents in pretty succinct manner. So if we need any advice, certainly we can go to Jeremy and obtain that advice.
I guess I'd be remiss not to mention that the statute that is the authorizing statute for redevelopment commissions does contain certain broad policy goals relative to fostering development and redevelopment of the city and investment here. So I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah. Does that answer your questions, Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions from commission members?
It's Linda. I have a couple
Sure.
questions and comments. On the first page in the actual resolution, it states in the fourth whereas, it says, whereas we now desire him to be as executive director on a permanent basis. Is permanent the word we want to use there? And then when you go down to number 1, where it says shall serve until such time as the commission shall appoint a successor. Should there be a term? Should we evaluate at a certain point? And that was kind of following what Indiana Code had said. It doesn't require a term, but I thought maybe a term there to just look at it again. I suppose there would be other things that would trigger that, maybe a change in his employment or something like that. But that goes along with, as I'm looking over here on the other side, in that I think one of the main things, and it doesn't really say that, and I would kind of like it to use I definitely would like it to use the words that one of the things he does is report to the RDC at all meetings. Our last executive director for almost the last 2 years only was at 5 meetings, but didn't really give a report. And in looking at what other executive directors do in other cities around our state, they do give reports. Jeremy, I know how busy he is right now. I hope he has the time to do both jobs, and chief of staff and this job, but that he would report to us on a regular basis. Like I know the Carmel RDC, it's on the agenda, the report from the executive director, and he speaks. I know like Noblesville does not have an executive director. I don't think Fishers does either. But I thought it should clearly say that we would want to report at our meetings from him. And then when it talks about staff and manage, I wish we as the RDC from him in his report would include who is the staff, what are their responsibilities, what are they doing? Because I've been on this for now a year, and I still don't quite understand like John's position or Rochelle, or exactly who does what. I know when we send emails, we copy everybody, so whoever's responsible picks it up. And in that section on staff and manage, it says down here where it says manage and market, and further down where it's talking about who you're meeting with, is this group, as they are also management teams that we have specifically for Grand Park. But I didn't see anything here where it said he should be communicating with them, or maybe he isn't communicating and they're communicating directly with us as a commission. I did think where it says hold regular project meetings with the city executive, commission, and council. That's where I said we also need to specify the reports, but I also thought that should include the clerk treasurer as the treasurer of our association, and so she's knowing on a timely manner what's happening, her office. So that was about it. I'd like to see the reports, and some of these other things considered and put in here.
Okay, those are good comments, Linda. A couple things come to mind. One, Matt Trinian runs Grand Park. That's the biggest item that we normally deal with, or the item that comes up most frequently, I guess I would say in those words. Matt Trinian provides a report frequently, usually monthly, on what the results are for the prior month, and he's also obviously got, well, he'll do those on a quarterly basis. Excuse me, he'll do those on a quarterly basis.
Right.
You need to look at trends. You need to look at changes that take place in a monthly meeting. Quite honestly, to me, to report monthly is a waste of time. You need to look at it quarterly.
But if we don't have a monthly meeting, we don't know what's even coming before the city. We're giving Jeremy, that responsibility to receive those communications and respond back. It doesn't have to be a long report, but other cities do this, and it's just hey, here's what's been going on in the last month. It also brings up things that we might want to consider. I also noticed something which is in code, but also was very clear at some of the cities where they're very clear to say responsive to economic development and real estate development inquiries within the city limits, because we only handle the city limits. And sometimes I get questioned about, is it city or is it township or what is it? Well, it's city limits. Beyond that, it's county redevelopment commissions that handle anything not within a city. So that could be, in the very first line, be responsive to, that could be specified more clearly.
Well,
But yeah, I just think we'd like to know, what he's doing. I know sometimes we get emails, but that's not in the public record. And it's hard to look back at all the emails to see, what
Well,
somebody said was happening.
Emails on the city system are public records that people can access.
I know they can request,
there's
but if
also-
it's in a report in a meeting, it's available.
Well,
easily.
keep in mind, Linda, that there's a lot of conversations that Jeremy's going to have with developers, with entities that may be interested in doing something in Westfield. And generally, those are confidential conversations that until you get down to the point where some action needs to be taken on a part of the city, Jeremy would then be the person that would bring it forward to the RDC to keep us tuned in. I mean, we did a lot of negotiations with the Millennium folks, and we've, I think, worked out a good deal for the city and for the taxpayers on funds that we were not going to get, which now have a much better opportunity and chance of being paid to the city, including the first $100,000 that we had from the additional funding that the 3132 folks received.
I'm not asking that he reveal anything that's proprietary or private at the time, or something that should be in an executive session. It is going
Well,
on.
Jeremy, is there anything you would like to say at this point, sir?
And I might add one intent with this list was to be broad on purpose and prudent, but that's a policy determination for you all, but they fit under things that are already in this list. So we could have exhausted you want to evaluate the position as a commission. There's always the potential to, in your role, we would like this. I would, underneath this general duties and obligations list, and that was intentional. So that's all I will say.
Jeremy?
So I guess if maybe to clarify or to make a point, the agenda is, generally speaking, everything that I do that's associated with the RDC. So you get a report, it's individualized, and you guys take action on it. Anything prior to that, from a reports perspective, I would be very reluctant to come and talk about any kind of development agreement prior to it being presented to the city council. And then as it pertains to the confidential stuff, we'll meet with developers and they'll have ideas and we'll talk about it. And either they, quite honestly, sometimes there's requests that we're not going to support as a city, or at least historically haven't. It's ready to present if it's not something we feel like the world is going to support. So, but if it's on a quarterly basis or however you see fit that you want to know, I'm happy.
That Jeremy is making, Linda, is never happens. Never happens. So to bring that forward, let me finish, to bring that forward to the commission and get us involved in the minutia of all those things that many times don't happen, I think it's a waste of the commissioner's time and, quite frankly, other people's time. Our goal, our mission is to approve the agreements, to improve the steps that our capable people, which we have in front of us tonight, on a number of items that we've approved. I think that's about things that may or may not happen is number one, it's a waste of time. Turn down people that want to put in a waste sorting facility and other things in Westfield in prior years. And none of that ever gets out in the forefront.
Those are not the things I'm talking about, okay? I'm talking about him reporting to us on actual things that we're working on. So if you're working on a project like that, what they learned was their redevelopment director should have been letting the council and the RDC know what was going on there until it got so far out of hand to where there were fewer and fewer options left. So I don't want to be that to be the only example, but I'm not asking for the minutia. I'm not asking you to tell us everyone who comes. I understand that. Okay. So, don't don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. I would just kind of like a report from him at each meeting that he's at and just saying what's going on. And maybe some meetings, it's nothing to report, but
I think the appendix, Exhibit A, that covers the duties, obligation, and authorities is broad enough, and I would encourage us to, let's let the system, since we have done this definition, we've never had this before, we've had this definition now, let's see how it works, and if there's issues that come up, I'm more than happy to listen to what suggestions commission members might make to make improvements to the process. But I
Yeah.
think I've asked Cam to work with Jeremy, which he's done, to come up with this list, and I think it's a great list. It's very broad, covers a lot of different areas, and let's see how it works.
well, and let's see that it doesn't take us back to the point, we had that report done that said, there was so much dysfunction here, there, and everywhere. So I just want, I understand why it needs to be broad. I understand that, but let's just, make sure that it, my concern is just that it's efficient and everybody knows what they need to know at the time they need to know it. Not that they know more, okay, or something that's proprietary.
And so Linda, I
That's
think
all I'm saying.
to take from your comments specifically about the Carmel Hotel, the closest thing we have to that is obviously the parking garage, assuming it gets final approval
Right.
for the bond.
Yeah, it's going to be starting up. Yeah.
Yep, and I'm happy to, I don't know if monthly is the right time, we can try that out, but I think it's more of a quarterly update on where we are with the construction process and where we are financially. I think I'm happy to come and give you guys an update on that.
Those types of updates would be
Yep,
very
and,
useful.
and then we'll stay in communication as it moves forward, and if there are other things that involve the RDC from a project perspective, either I or the appropriate person will come and give updates. I have no issue with that, and as far as being at the meetings, I intend on being at all of them unless I'm otherwise obligated, but yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I was going to say, I think it's basically, for me, my perspective is, I know you're involved in a lot of negotiations and a lot of proprietary things, and I'm not interested really in what you're doing on that end of it. But just like, and I don't know, maybe quarterly would be good, just like a brief synopsis about things that have already flowed through here, like what's happening, are you running into problems here or there, and, just giving us some updates on the ongoing projects that have already flowed through here so we can just kind of keep up with it might be helpful.
Yeah, and I have no issue with that, and as you can see with the Union Square project, there's like 19 steps, so a quick update of which step we're on.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do those.
Yep.
Just an overview.
that'd be
It doesn't
great.
have to be even super deep.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mr. President, based on the discussion that we've had and the fact that Jeremy has been very forthright, and Cam and Jeremy have done, I think, a very good job of providing duties of the director that we've never had before. It's exactly what we had asked for. Also knowing Jeremy, and I'm sure he will report back to us on a regular basis by his attendance at the meetings, and if we want more detail, I'm sure he will provide that. Based on that, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 10-2022.
okay, we have a motion on the floor, do I have a second?
I'll second with one note, and just for clarification, can we get rid of the footer at the bottom that doesn't pertain to,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for approval of resolution 10-2022. John, please take the roll.
Bob Bodray,
Aye.
Linda Noss,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Any additional business before the commission?
I have none.
Okay, I would ask the commission members to stick around for a few minutes. We have some documents to sign, so we'd like to get that taken care of after we adjourn. Appreciate it. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, so